The bullet came so close to Olivia Lancaster's face that she felt the heat of it sear past her cheek before it embedded itself in the wooden doorframe behind her. She had been in the wrong place at the wrong time, and now 3 men wanted her dead for what she had witnessed in that alley behind the Silver Creek Saloon in Ruby City, Idaho. It was late September in 1878, and Olivia had only been in town for 2 weeks, working as a seamstress in Mrs. Henderson's dress shop on Main Street. She had come west from Philadelphia after her parents died of fever, seeking a fresh start in the territories where a woman could still carve out a respectable living with nothing but her skills and determination. She never imagined that a simple walk back to her boarding house after delivering an evening gown would change her life forever. She had cut through the alley because the main street was crowded with drunken miners celebrating their latest strike. The shortcut seemed safer at the time. But then she saw them. 3 men standing over a 4th who lay motionless on the ground. The moonlight caught the face of one of the killers, and she recognized him immediately. Marcus Blackthorne, the richest mine owner in the territory, a man whose face appeared in the newspaper regularly, always smiling beside politicians and lawmen. His hands were covered in blood. Their eyes met for a single terrible moment. Then she ran. That was 3 days ago, and she had been running ever since. She fled her boarding house that same night, taking only what she could carry in a canvas bag. The town marshal was in Blackthorne's pocket. Everyone knew that, so going to the law was not an option. She tried to hide in the surrounding hills, but Blackthorne's men were everywhere, combing the countryside like wolves on the scent of wounded prey. Now she was exhausted, hungry, and completely lost in the rugged mountains north of Ruby City. The autumn air had turned cold, and she had no proper winter clothing, just the thin wool dress she had been wearing when she witnessed the murder. Her boots were nearly worn through, her feet bleeding and blistered. She knew she could not last much longer. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple, when she heard the horses behind her. 3 riders moving fast through the pine trees. She recognized the voices calling to each other, coordinating their search. They were close, too close. Panic seized her chest, and she stumbled forward, her legs barely able to carry her weight anymore. The ground suddenly gave way beneath her feet, and she tumbled down a steep embankment, crashing through brush and over rocks. She came to rest at the bottom of a ravine, pain shooting through her ankle and ribs. Above her, she could hear the horses passing, the men shouting to each other. They had not seen her fall. She tried to stand but collapsed immediately, her ankle unable to bear any weight. Tears of frustration and fear streamed down her face as she crawled beneath an overhanging rock, trying to make herself as small as possible. This was it, she thought. She would die out here, either from exposure or from a bullet when those men eventually found her. That was when she heard the different sound, the deliberate crunch of boots on the forest floor. Heavy, measured steps. She held her breath, pressing herself back against the cold stone, knowing it was futile. A shadow fell across the entrance to her hiding spot, and she looked up into the face of the largest man she had ever seen. He stood well over 6 feet tall, with shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the dying light. His arms were thick with muscle, visible even beneath the buckskin shirt he wore. His hair was dark brown, falling past his shoulders in waves that he had tied back with a leather cord. A full beard covered his jaw, but it did not hide the sharp intelligence in his gray eyes as they assessed her condition. A rifle was slung across his back, and a hunting knife hung from his belt. Everything about him spoke of strength and capability, of a man who had survived in these mountains through sheer will and power. "Please," Olivia whispered, her voice cracking, "please help me." The man did not speak. He simply studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he crouched down, bringing himself to her level, and she could see the concern in his eyes despite his stern features. "You are hurt," he said finally. His voice was deep and rough, like gravel, as though he did not use it often. "My ankle," she managed, "and my ribs. I fell." He nodded once, then looked up toward the ridge where she had tumbled down. She could still hear the horses in the distance, the men calling to each other. The stranger's eyes narrowed and his jaw tightened. "Who is looking for you?" he asked. "Dangerous men," she said. "I saw something I should not have seen. They will kill me if they find me." He looked at her again, and she saw the decision form in his eyes before he spoke. "Can you ride?" "I do not know. I can barely walk." Without another word, he reached down and scooped her up in his arms as though she weighed nothing at all. She gasped at the sudden movement, pain flaring in her ribs, but he held her carefully, adjusting his grip to support her injured side. The muscles in his arms felt like iron beneath her hands. "My name is Warren Northwood," he said as he began climbing out of the ravine with her in his arms, moving with surprising ease despite the steep terrain and his burden. "I live in these mountains." "Those men will not find you where I am taking you, Olivia Lancaster," she replied, then winced as another jolt of pain shot through her ribs. "Save your strength," Warren said. "We have a ways to go, and I need to move fast before they circle back this way." True to his word, he moved through the forest with remarkable speed and silence. His steps were sure even in the fading light, navigating between trees and over obstacles as though he knew every inch of this wilderness. She could feel the steady rhythm of his breathing, the solid warmth of his chest against her side. Despite her pain and fear, she felt a strange sense of safety in his arms. After what seemed like an hour of steady climbing, they reached a clearing where a large sorrel horse was tethered. The animal lifted its head at their approach but did not seem startled. Warren had clearly trained it well. He lifted Olivia into the saddle, then swung up behind her with fluid grace. His arm came around her waist, holding her securely against his chest. "There is a cave system a few miles north," he said, his breath warm against her ear. "No one knows about it except me. You will be safe there." She wanted to ask him why he was helping her, why he was risking himself for a stranger, but exhaustion and pain were making it hard to think clearly. She simply nodded and let herself lean back against his solid strength as he urged the horse forward into the darkening forest. The ride seemed to take forever and no time at all. Olivia drifted in and out of consciousness, vaguely aware of the horse's steady movement and Warren's arm keeping her secure. At some point, the landscape changed from dense forest to rocky terrain, and the horse's hooves began echoing oddly, as though they were in an enclosed space. When she next became fully aware of her surroundings, Warren was lifting her down from the horse. They were inside a massive cave lit by the warm glow of a fire. The ceiling soared above them, lost in shadows, but the area near the fire was surprisingly comfortable. She could see blankets and furs laid out on the ground, supplies stored neatly against the walls, and a small cooking area set up near the flames. Warren carried her to the pile of furs and laid her down gently. "I need to examine your injuries," he said. "May I?" She nodded, too tired to be modest. He worked with surprising gentleness, his large hands careful as he unlaced her boot and eased it off her swollen ankle. She hissed in pain and he murmured an apology. "Not broken," he said after a thorough examination. "Badly sprained. Your ribs are bruised but not cracked, I think." "You are lucky," she repeated with a weak laugh that turned into a cough. He fetched a canteen and helped her drink, supporting her head with one hand. The water was cold and sweet, the best thing she had ever tasted. When she had drunk her fill, he set the canteen aside and began wrapping her ankle with strips of clean cloth, binding it firmly but not too tightly. "You need food and rest," he said. "Then you can tell me about these dangerous men." Over the next hour, while Warren prepared a simple meal of venison stew and flatbread, Olivia told him everything. She described witnessing the murder, recognizing Marcus Blackthorne, fleeing into the wilderness. Warren listened without interruption, his expression growing darker as she spoke. "Blackthorne," he said finally, his voice hard. "I know that name. He owns half the territory by now, and he does it by crushing anyone who stands in his way." "You believe me then?" Olivia asked. She had half expected him to think she was hysterical or mistaken. "I believe you," Warren said. He ladled stew into a wooden bowl and brought it to her. "I have lived in these mountains for 5 years, ever since I mustered out of the army. I came here to get away from killing and corruption, but I still hear things when I go into town for supplies. Blackthorne's name comes up often, always tied to mysterious accidents and disappearances. Why has no one stopped him? Who would stop him? He owns the marshal, probably the judge too. Men like that are above the law until someone bigger comes along to knock them down." He settled onto a log near the fire, his own bowl of stew in hand. "But that does not matter right now. What matters is keeping you alive." "Why are you helping me?" Olivia asked. "You do not know me. You are putting yourself in danger." Warren was silent for a long moment, staring into the fire. "I spent 4 years in the army fighting in the Indian Wars. I saw too many people die, did too much killing myself. When I mustered out, I swore I would never stand by and watch an innocent person be hurt if I had the power to stop it." He looked at her then, his gray eyes intense in the firelight. "You are innocent. Those men want to kill you for something that was not your fault. So I will help you." The simple conviction in his voice brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. He nodded and returned his attention to his meal, clearly uncomfortable with gratitude. Over the following days, Olivia recovered in Warren's hidden sanctuary. Her ankle improved steadily under his care, and the bruising on her ribs began to fade. He proved to be a surprisingly attentive nurse, checking her injuries twice daily, and making sure she ate regular meals. The food was simple but hearty. Game he hunted himself, supplemented with wild greens and roots he foraged from the mountainside. The cave system turned out to be even more extensive than she had first realized. Warren showed her the various chambers once she could walk with the aid of a makeshift crutch he fashioned for her. There was a natural spring in one of the deeper caves that provided fresh water year-round. Another chamber had a natural chimney that vented smoke from the fire, keeping the air clear. He had even created a separate sleeping area for her, giving her privacy while he made his bed nearer the entrance. As the days passed, Olivia learned more about the man who had saved her life. Warren had grown up on a farm in Kansas, the youngest of 5 brothers. When the war came, all 5 had enlisted together. Only Warren had come home. The loss had devastated his parents, and Warren had found himself unable to stay on the farm where memories haunted every corner. So he had headed west, deeper and deeper into the wilderness, until he found these mountains and finally felt like he could breathe again. "I built this place as a refuge," he told her one evening as they sat by the fire. "Somewhere I could be alone with my thoughts, away from people and their endless conflicts." "And then I brought conflict right to your doorstep," Olivia said, feeling guilty. "You did not bring it. They did." His jaw tightened. "And I will not let them take you." His fierce protectiveness stirred something warm in her chest, a feeling she had not experienced in a long time. She found herself watching him when he was not looking, admiring the way his muscles moved beneath his shirt when he worked, the careful way he handled everything from his weapons to the food he prepared. There was a gentleness in him that contrasted sharply with his powerful exterior, a kindness that had survived despite everything he had endured. She also noticed the way he sometimes watched her, his gray eyes following her movements when she walked around the cave, a certain softness in his expression when he thought she was not looking. The awareness between them grew with each passing day, a tension that was not unpleasant but rather exciting, and a little frightening in its intensity. 2 weeks after Warren had found her in the ravine, Olivia's ankle was strong enough for her to walk without the crutch. To celebrate, Warren offered to take her to a nearby meadow he had mentioned, a place where wild flowers still bloomed despite the lateness of the season. They rode together on his horse, Olivia seated in front of Warren with his arms around her as he held the reins. The position forced them into close contact, her back against his chest, his breath stirring her hair. She felt hyper-aware of every point where their bodies touched, of the strength in the arms that surrounded her. The meadow was everything he had promised, a hidden valley carpeted in late-blooming asters and goldenrod. Mountains rose on all sides, their peaks already dusted with early snow. The afternoon sun was warm despite the autumn chill, and the air smelled of pine and wildflowers. Warren helped her down from the horse, his hands lingering on her waist perhaps a moment longer than necessary. She looked up at him, and something in his expression made her breath catch. For a moment she thought he might kiss her, but then he stepped back, his jaw tight. "You should rest," he said, his voice rough. "Your ankle is not fully healed yet." She wanted to tell him that her ankle was fine, that she did not want to rest, that she wanted him to keep looking at her the way he had been just a moment ago. But she simply nodded and allowed him to lead her to a flat rock where she could sit. They spent the afternoon in companionable silence, enjoying the peace of the hidden valley. Warren whittled a piece of wood with his knife, his movements practiced and sure, while Olivia simply soaked in the beauty around her. It occurred to her that she had not thought about Blackthorn or his men in days, had not felt the constant fear that had haunted her since that night in Ruby City. Here, with Warren, she felt safe in a way she had never felt with anyone else. "Warren," she said eventually, breaking the silence, "what will I do when winter comes? I cannot stay in your cave forever, and those men are still looking for me." His hands stilled on the wood. "You can stay as long as you need to," he said without looking up. "I have supplies enough for 2, and I know how to hunt and trap through the winter. But surely you want your solitude back. You came to these mountains to be alone." Now he did look at her, and the intensity in his gray eyes made her pulse quicken. "I thought I wanted to be alone," he said slowly. "But these past 2 weeks having you here, it has been different. Good different. The cave feels less like a hiding place and more like a home." Her heart hammered in her chest. Warren, You do not need to say anything, he interrupted, looking away again. I just want you to know that you are not a burden. You are welcome to stay as long as you want, as long as you need. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with unspoken meaning. Olivia understood what he was really saying, what he was offering. Not just shelter, but something more, something that made her both nervous and excited. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold, Warren rose and extended his hand to help her up. When she placed her hand in his, he pulled her to her feet but did not immediately release her. They stood close enough that she had to tilt her head back to look at him. His free hand came up to cup her face, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone with infinite gentleness. Olivia, he said, his voice barely above a whisper, if I am misreading this, if I am wrong about what I think I feel between us, tell me now. Instead of answering with words, she rose onto her toes and kissed him. For a heartbeat, Warren was completely still, as though shocked. Then his arms came around her, pulling her against his chest, as he returned the kiss with a hunger that took her breath away. She had been kissed before by the boys she had been engaged to back in Philadelphia, but those had been chaste, proper kisses, nothing like this. Warren kissed her like a man who had been starving, and she was sustenance, deep and passionate and utterly consuming. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Warren rested his forehead against hers. I have been wanting to do that for days, he admitted. I know, she said with a small smile. I could tell. Was I that obvious? Only to someone who was watching you as closely as I was watching you. He laughed then, a genuine sound of joy that she realized she had never heard from him before. It transformed his face, making him look younger, less burdened. She wanted to hear that laugh again and again. They rode back to the cave as darkness fell, but everything felt different now. The tension between them had not disappeared, but it had changed, become something acknowledged and welcomed, rather than something to be cautiously avoided. When they reached the cave, Warren built up the fire while Olivia prepared their evening meal, working together with an easy domesticity that felt natural and right. That night, as they sat by the fire after eating, Warren pulled her close against his side, his arm around her shoulders. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Tell me about Philadelphia, he said. Tell me about your life before. So she did. She told him about growing up as an only child, about her father's tailor shop and how he had taught her to sew, about her mother's love of reading, and how she had made sure Olivia could read and write well. She told him about the fever that took them both within days of each other, about the loneliness that followed, about her decision to head west where no one knew her and she could start fresh. And then you ended up in Ruby City, working for Mrs. Henderson, Warren said. It was supposed to be a new beginning, Olivia said. Instead, it nearly became my end, but it brought you here, to me. He tightened his arm around her. I know the circumstances were terrible, but I cannot bring myself to regret that you stumbled into my mountains. Neither can I, she admitted. Is that wrong, to be grateful for something that came from such violence? I do not think so. I think we take what good we can find in this world and hold on to it tightly, because the bad is everywhere and will always be there. They sat in silence for a while, simply holding each other, until Warren spoke again. Olivia, I need to tell you something about why I understand what it is like to be hunted. She looked up at him, seeing the tension in his jaw. What do you mean? When I left the army, it was not exactly voluntary. I mean, my enlistment was up, so technically I was free to go. But there were some who did not want me to leave. He stared into the fire, his expression distant. I witnessed something during the war, an officer ordering his men to kill women and children in a Cheyenne village. When I objected, tried to stop it, he threatened me, said if I ever spoke of what I saw, he would make sure I was tried for treason and hanged. Olivia's hand found his, squeezing tightly. What did you do? I kept my mouth shut and served out my time. But that officer, he could not be sure I would not talk once I was out. He sent men after me twice that first year. I had to kill them both. The words were flat, factual. That is when I went deeper into the mountains, when I found this cave and decided to disappear completely. It has been quiet for the past few years. I think he finally believes I am dead or too far gone to matter. So you understand, Olivia said. What it is like to have powerful men want you dead for witnessing their crimes. I understand, Warren confirmed. And I will not let them have you. I swear it. The conviction in his voice, the protective fury in his eyes, made her believe him completely. She shifted in his arms, turning to face him fully, and kissed him again. This time he responded immediately, his hand tangling in her hair as he deepened the kiss. When they finally separated, both breathing heavily, Olivia rested her forehead against his. "I am falling in love with you," she whispered. "I know it is fast. I know we have only known each other a short time, but I cannot help it." "Then do not help it," Warren said, his gray eyes burning into hers. "Because I am falling in love with you too, and I do not want to stop." They held each other late into the night, talking softly, stealing kisses, learning the shape of each other's bodies through their clothes. Warren was always careful, always respectful, never pushing for more than Olivia was ready to give. But the heat between them built steadily, a fire that would not be easily banked. When they finally separated to their respective sleeping areas, Olivia lay awake for a long time, her fingers touching her lips, where she could still feel the pressure of his kisses. For the first time since that terrible night in Ruby City, she felt something other than fear. She felt hope. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Olivia's life. She and Warren fell into a comfortable routine, working together to prepare for the coming winter. He taught her how to set snares for rabbits and how to identify edible plants. She mended his clothes and organized his somewhat haphazard supplies into something more manageable. They cooked together, ate together, talked for hours by the fire, and they grew closer physically and emotionally with each passing day. Their kisses became more frequent, more passionate. Warren's hands began to explore the shape of her body, always stopping when she tensed, always gentle and patient. She learned the feel of the muscles in his back and shoulders, the rasp of his beard against her neck, the sound he made deep in his throat when she ran her fingers through his hair. "Marry me," Warren said one evening as they lay tangled together on the furs, both of them flushed and breathing hard from their latest kiss. "I know we should wait. I know there are reasons to be practical, but I do not want to wait. I love you, Olivia. Marry me." "Yes," she said without hesitation. "Yes, Warren, I will marry you." He kissed her then with such tenderness that tears sprang to her eyes. "I do not have a ring to give you," he said against her lips. "I do not have much of anything except this cave and my horse and supplies." "You have yourself," Olivia said, "and that is worth more than all the gold in Marcus Blackthorn's mines." "I will make you a ring," Warren promised. "Something worthy of you." True to his word, Warren spent the next several days working on a project he kept hidden from her. When he finally revealed it, Olivia was speechless. He had carved a ring from a piece of mountain mahogany, polishing it until it gleamed like silk. The band was decorated with an intricate pattern of leaves and vines, so finely detailed it must have taken hours of patient work. "It is not gold," Warren said as he slipped it onto her finger. "But it came from these mountains, like our love did, and it will not tarnish or fade." "It is perfect," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "You are perfect." They were married a week later by a traveling preacher Warren knew, an old man who made a circuit through the mountain settlements twice a year. The ceremony was simple, held in the meadow where they had first kissed, with the preacher as their only witness. Olivia wore her best dress, the one she had been mending, and Warren had trimmed his beard and tied back his hair. When the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Warren lifted Olivia in his arms and spun her around, both of them laughing with pure joy. That night, in the privacy of their cave, Warren made love to her with exquisite gentleness, taking his time, making sure she felt nothing but pleasure. Afterward, as they lay wrapped in each other's arms, Olivia felt a completeness she had never known was possible. This man, this strong, gentle, protective man, was hers, and she was his. "I never thought I would find this," Warren murmured against her hair. "Never thought I could be this happy." "Neither did I," Olivia said. "But here we are, he agreed and kissed her again. The days shortened as autumn gave way to early winter, and the first real snowfall came in late November. Warren had been right about his supplies. They had more than enough food stored to last through the cold months. The cave remained warm and comfortable thanks to the fire and the thick furs Warren had accumulated over his years in the mountains, but as content as they were in their hidden sanctuary, the shadow of Marcus Blackthorn still loomed over them. Warren made occasional trips down the mountain to trade furs and check for news, always careful to stay clear of Ruby City itself. What he heard was not encouraging. Blackthorn's men were still searching for Olivia, though they seemed to believe she had perished in the wilderness. The man she had seen Blackthorn murder had been identified as a federal land agent who had been investigating fraud in Blackthorn's mining claims. "He is getting bolder," Warren reported after one such trip in early December. "There is talk of him running for territorial governor, If that happens, he will be untouchable. What can we do? Olivia asked, though she already knew the answer. Nothing right now, Warren said grimly. You are still in danger. If he even suspects you are alive, he will send an army into these mountains. We wait. We survive the winter. And then, come spring, we figure out what to do next. It was not the answer Olivia wanted, but she understood the wisdom in it. So they settled in to wait out the winter, finding comfort in each other and in the simple rhythms of their life together. As December turned to January, Olivia discovered she was pregnant. The realization came with a mix of joy and fear. A baby, their baby, was growing inside her. But she was a fugitive, hiding in a mountain cave from men who wanted her dead. What kind of life could they offer a child? When she told Warren, his reaction erased all her fears. His face lit up with such pure happiness that she started crying. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tightly, and she felt him trembling. A baby, he whispered. Olivia, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy? She asked, though she could already see that he was. Happy does not begin to cover it, Warren said. Terrified, yes, but so incredibly happy. He became even more protective after that, insisting that she not overexert herself, that she rest frequently, that she eat the best portions of their meals. Olivia found his hovering both endearing and occasionally frustrating, but she understood it came from a place of love and concern. He had already lost so much in his life. The thought of losing her or their child was unbearable to him. As winter deepened and Olivia's pregnancy progressed, they made plans for the future. Warren began talking about building a cabin somewhere even more remote, a place where they could raise their child in safety. He spoke of teaching their son or daughter to hunt and fish and survive in the wilderness, of the life they would build together. What if it is a son? Olivia asked one evening as they lay together, Warren's hand resting protectively on her growing belly. What will we name him? I have been thinking about that, Warren said. What about Samuel, after my oldest brother? He was a good man, the best of us. He would have liked you. Samuel Northwood, Olivia said, trying it out. I like it. And if it is a daughter, you choose, Warren said. She will be half you after all. She should carry a name you love. Grace, Olivia said after a moment. For my mother, her middle name was Grace Northwood, Warren repeated. Perfect. But their peaceful winter was shattered in late February when Warren returned from a supply run with troubling news. He had gone to a trading post 2 days' ride from their cave, a place run by a French-Canadian trapper named Jean-Baptiste who was friendly to Warren. Jean-Baptiste had warned him that a group of men had been asking questions, describing Olivia, and offering a substantial reward for information about her whereabouts. They are getting desperate, Warren said as he paced the cave, his agitation clear in every movement. Blackthorn cannot afford to have you surface, especially now that he is making his political moves. He is throwing money around, promising rewards to anyone who can find you or confirm that you are dead. So what do we do? Olivia asked, her hand instinctively going to her belly, now obviously rounded with the baby. Warren stopped pacing and looked at her, his expression determined. We end this. I have been thinking about it all the way back. There is only one way you will ever truly be safe, and that is if Blackthorn cannot threaten you anymore. What are you saying? I am saying we need evidence. Real evidence that proves Blackthorn committed that murder. Something so solid that not even his money and connections can make it go away. He came to kneel in front of her, taking her hands in his. I know it is a risk, but living like this, always looking over our shoulders, never able to go anywhere or do anything, that is not the life I want for you or our child. How would we even get evidence? Olivia asked. It has been months since the murder. Whatever proof existed is long gone by now. Maybe, Warren agreed. But there might be another way. Jean-Baptiste told me something interesting. The man Blackthorn killed, the federal land agent, he had a partner. Another agent who was working with him on the investigation. That partner has been making noise, asking questions about what happened to his colleague. If we can reach him, tell him what you saw, he might be able to build a case. And if he is in Blackthorn's pocket like everyone else, Jean-Baptiste says this man has a reputation for integrity. He has been investigating corruption in the territory for years and he does not take bribes. His name is Thomas Weatherby, and he is currently in Boise City conducting interviews. Olivia considered this. The thought of leaving their safe haven, of putting herself in potential danger, was terrifying. But Warren was right. They could not live like this forever, and their child deserved better than a life spent hiding in a cave. When would we go? She asked. Warren said firmly. Me. I will go to Boise City and speak with this Weatherby. You will stay here where it is safe. Absolutely not, Olivia said just as firmly. I am not letting you risk yourself alone. Besides, I am the witness. Weatherby will need to hear my testimony directly. You are 7 months pregnant, Olivia. The journey alone could be dangerous, and if something went wrong, nothing will go wrong because you will be with me, she interrupted. Warren, I know you want to protect me, but we are partners now. We make decisions together. And I am telling you, I am coming with you to Boise City. They argued about it for the better part of an hour, but eventually Warren conceded, though he made her promise to tell him immediately if she felt any discomfort or strain during the journey. They spent the next few days preparing, gathering supplies and planning their route. Warren wanted to avoid Ruby City and any other settlements where Blackthorn's influence was strong, which meant taking a longer, more difficult path through the mountains. They set out on a cold March morning, both of them on Warren's horse, with their supplies packed behind the saddle. The journey was harder than Olivia had anticipated. The terrain was rough, and despite Warren's best efforts to find easy paths, there were times when the jarring movement made her ribs ache and her back protest. But she gritted her teeth and endured, knowing this was necessary. It took them 5 days to reach Boise City, stopping frequently to rest and camping each night in sheltered spots Warren selected. He was endlessly attentive, making sure she was warm and comfortable, never complaining when she needed to stop more frequently than he would have preferred. By the time they finally saw the buildings of Boise City in the distance, Olivia was exhausted, but triumphant. They had made it. Warren found them a small, discreet boarding house on the edge of town, paying for a week in advance and explaining to the landlady that his pregnant wife needed rest after their journey from the family homestead. The landlady, a kindly woman named Mrs. Abbott, immediately took Olivia under her wing, insisting she rest while Mrs. Abbott brought her tea and soup. Once Olivia was settled, Warren set about finding Thomas Weatherby. It took less than a day. Weatherby was staying at the hotel in the center of town, and Warren sent him a carefully worded message requesting a private meeting regarding the death of the federal land agent in Ruby City. Weatherby responded immediately, agreeing to meet them in their boarding house room that very evening. When he arrived, Olivia understood why Jean-Baptiste had trusted him. Thomas Weatherby was a man in his early 50s with graying hair and intelligent eyes that missed nothing. He carried himself with quiet authority, and when he listened to Olivia's account of what she had witnessed, she could see the fury building in his expression. Marcus Blackthorn, he said when she finished. I have suspected him of dozens of crimes, but I have never been able to prove anything. He is careful, and his money buys a lot of silence. Will my testimony be enough? Olivia asked. It would be if we can corroborate it with physical evidence, Weatherby said. The problem is that Blackthorn's people cleaned up the scene before my colleague's body was even found. By the time I arrived in Ruby City to investigate, there was nothing left to find. So there is nothing you can do? Warren's voice was hard. I did not say that, Weatherby replied. I have been building a case against Blackthorn for months, documenting every suspicious death, every intimidated witness, every financial irregularity in his business dealings. Your wife's testimony is the first direct eyewitness account I have obtained. Combined with everything else I have gathered, it might be enough to convince a federal judge to issue warrants. Might be, Olivia said. I will not lie to you, Mrs. Northwood. Blackthorn is powerful and well-connected. Taking him down will not be easy, and it will not be fast. But if you are willing to testify, if you are willing to go on record with what you saw, I believe we can build a case strong enough to bring him to trial. Olivia looked at Warren, who nodded almost imperceptibly. I will testify, she said, whatever it takes. Over the next week, Olivia gave multiple statements to Weatherby, describing in detail everything she had witnessed that night in Ruby City. Warren was with her for every interview, his presence a solid, comforting anchor. Weatherby also interviewed Warren about finding Olivia and about Blackthorn's men searching for her, adding their testimony to his growing case file. I am submitting everything to the federal court in Salt Lake City, Weatherby told them at their final meeting. It will take time for them to review the evidence and decide whether to issue indictments, but I am confident in what we have built here. In the meantime, I strongly suggest you two disappear again. Once Blackthorn learns that you have resurfaced and given testimony, he will become even more dangerous. We were planning to head north, Warren said. Find someplace even more remote than where we have been. Good, Weatherby said. He handed Warren a card with an address. This is where you can reach me. I will send word when there is news, but it could be months before anything happens." They left Boise City the next morning, heading north into Montana Territory. The journey was slower now, with Olivia so heavily pregnant, but Warren was patient and careful. They stopped frequently, and he scouted ahead to find the easiest routes. Despite the difficulty, Olivia felt lighter than she had in months. They had done it. They had given their testimony. Now it was just a matter of waiting for justice to take its course. They were 2 weeks into Montana Territory when Olivia went into labor. They had stopped for the night in a sheltered valley, and Warren was tending to the horse when Olivia felt the first contraction. She recognized it immediately from the conversation she had had with Mrs. Abbott back in Boise City. "Warren," she called, trying to keep her voice calm. "The baby is coming." To his credit, Warren did not panic. He had been preparing for this possibility ever since they left their cave, gathering supplies and information about childbirth from anyone who would talk to him. He quickly built up the fire and laid out their warmest blankets and furs, creating a comfortable nest for Olivia. The labor was long and difficult, lasting through the night and into the next day. Warren stayed with her the entire time, holding her hand, wiping her forehead with a cool cloth, murmuring encouragement. When she screamed with pain, he did not flinch. When she cursed him for getting her pregnant, he apologized with complete sincerity. And when she finally pushed their baby into the world just as the sun was setting on the second day, he was there to catch their son and place him in her arms. "Samuel," Olivia whispered, looking down at the squalling red face of their baby. "Our Samuel." Warren was crying openly, tears streaming down his face as he looked at his wife and son. "He is perfect," he said hoarsely. "You are perfect, both of you." They stayed in that valley for 3 weeks, letting Olivia recover from the birth and giving Samuel time to grow stronger before they continued their journey. Warren was besotted with his son, holding him whenever Olivia was not feeding him, talking to him constantly even though the baby was far too young to understand. He fashioned a sling so Olivia could carry Samuel against her chest as they traveled, keeping him warm and secure. By late May, they had reached a remote area of Montana near the Canadian border, where Warren found what he had been looking for: a pristine valley with a stream running through it, surrounded by mountains and accessible only through a narrow pass that could easily be defended. Here, he declared, they would build their home. Over the summer, Warren worked tirelessly to construct a cabin. It was not large, just 2 rooms, but it was solid and weatherproof, with a stone fireplace for heat and cooking. He built furniture by hand: chairs and a table, a cradle for Samuel, a proper bed for him and Olivia. He hunted and fished to build up their food stores, and Olivia planted a garden near the cabin, coaxing vegetables from the rich soil. It was hard work, but it was also deeply satisfying. They were building something permanent, something that was truly theirs. And little Samuel grew and thrived, his eyes turning from newborn blue to the same gray as his father's, his laughter filling the valley with joy. In September, nearly a year after Olivia had witnessed the murder in Ruby City, a messenger found them. He had been sent by Thomas Weatherby with news. A federal grand jury had indicted Marcus Blackthorne on charges of murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Blackthorne had been arrested and was being held pending trial. The messenger also brought a letter from Weatherby explaining that Olivia's testimony had been crucial to securing the indictment and that she would need to return to testify at the trial itself, scheduled for the following spring. "We will go," Warren said when Olivia expressed her concerns about leaving their new home and taking Samuel on such a long journey. "We will face this together as a family, and then we will come back here and never have to hide again." The months between the indictment and the trial passed quickly. Winter came early to their Montana valley, blanketing everything in deep snow, but their cabin remained warm and cozy. Warren taught Olivia to ski using boards he fashioned himself, and they spent many afternoons gliding through the snowy forest with Samuel bundled warmly against Olivia's chest. In the evenings they sat by the fire, reading from the few books they possessed, telling stories, making plans for the future. "When this is all over," Warren said one night, "I want to have more children. Fill this valley with Northwoods." He looked at Samuel, now crawling around the cabin and getting into everything. "What do you think? Should we give Samuel a brother or sister?" "I think that sounds wonderful," Olivia said, smiling, "though perhaps we should wait until after the trial to start working on that." "Perhaps," Warren agreed, pulling her close, "but there is no harm in practicing." She laughed and kissed him, and they spent the rest of the evening showing each other just how much they loved one another. When spring came, They packed up their belongings and made the long journey south to Salt Lake City, where the federal court was holding Blackthorn's trial. The journey took nearly 6 weeks with a toddler, but Samuel proved to be an excellent traveler, charming everyone they met with his ready smile and curious nature. Thomas Weatherby met them when they arrived in Salt Lake City, greeting them warmly and expressing his delight at meeting little Samuel. He explained that the trial had attracted national attention, with newspapers from as far away as New York sending reporters to cover it. Blackthorn had hired the best lawyers money could buy, and they were fighting the charges viciously. "Your testimony is key," Weatherby told Olivia. "Blackthorn's lawyers will try to discredit you, claim you are mistaken or lying. You need to be strong and stick to what you know to be true." "I will," Olivia promised. The day she took the stand was one of the most difficult of her life. Blackthorn sat at the defense table looking smug and confident, his expensive lawyers flanking him. When Olivia looked at him, she saw no remorse in his eyes, only cold calculation. But she did not let that intimidate her. With Warren sitting in the gallery behind her, his presence giving her strength, she told the jury exactly what she had witnessed that night in the alley. Blackthorn's lawyers attacked her credibility mercilessly, suggesting she was a desperate woman who had concocted this story for attention or money. They pointed out that she had run away instead of going to the authorities immediately, implying that proved her story was false. But Olivia held firm, calmly explaining that she had feared for her life, that she knew Blackthorn controlled the local law enforcement, that running had been her only option. The turning point came when the prosecution introduced additional evidence that Weatherby had uncovered. Financial records showing that the murdered land agent had been preparing to file fraud charges against Blackthorn, testimony from other witnesses who had seen Blackthorn arguing with the agent days before his death, and forensic evidence that matched the scene to Olivia's description. After 3 weeks of testimony and arguments, the jury deliberated for 2 days before returning their verdict. Guilty on all counts. Blackthorn was sentenced to life in prison, and his entire criminal empire began to crumble as former associates rushed to cut deals with the prosecutors. When the verdict was read, Olivia felt as though an enormous weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Warren was there immediately, wrapping her in his arms while she cried tears of relief and release. It was over. Finally, after more than a year of fear and hiding, it was truly over. They stayed in Salt Lake City for another week, wrapping up loose ends and speaking with the prosecutors one final time. Weatherby thanked them profusely for their courage and told them they had helped bring down one of the most corrupt men in the territory. Then, with light hearts and a bright future ahead of them, they began the journey back to their Montana valley. The return trip felt different from any journey they had made before. There was no urgency, no fear, no need to look over their shoulders. They took their time, stopping to camp in beautiful spots, letting Samuel toddle around and explore under their watchful eyes. Warren and Olivia talked about their plans, about expanding the cabin, about the children they hoped to have, about the life they would build together in their hidden valley. "Do you ever regret it?" Warren asked one evening as they sat by their campfire, Samuel asleep between them. "Leaving Philadelphia, coming west, all the hardship you have endured?" "Not for a moment," Olivia said firmly. "If I had stayed in Philadelphia, I would have lived a safe, comfortable, predictable life. I would have married some merchant's son and spent my days sewing dresses and hosting tea parties. And I would have been miserable, even if I did not realize it." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the firelight. "Here with you, I have found something I did not even know I was looking for. Purpose, love, adventure. I would not trade this life for anything." Warren kissed her softly. "I love you, Olivia Northwood, more than I thought it was possible to love anyone." "I love you too," she whispered back. "My mountain man, my protector, my heart." They reached their valley in late June, and it was like coming home in the truest sense of the word. The garden Olivia had planted the previous year had reseeded itself, and the cabin stood solid and welcoming against the backdrop of the mountains. They settled back into their life with ease, falling into familiar routines that felt comfortable and right. Over the following years, their family grew. A daughter arrived the next spring, and they named her Grace as they had planned. Then came another son, whom they named William after Warren's father, and finally another daughter, Emma, completing their family. The cabin was expanded to accommodate them all, and the valley rang with the sounds of children's laughter. Warren proved to be an exceptional father, patient and loving while still teaching his children the skills they needed to survive in the wilderness. He taught Samuel and William to hunt and track, to fish and trap, to navigate by the stars and read the weather. He taught Grace and Emma the same skills, believing that daughters should be just as capable as sons in this wild country. Olivia established a small school in their cabin during the winter months, teaching all 4 children to read and write, to do mathematics, to understand history and geography. She was determined that they would be educated, even living as remotely as they did. Warren supported this fully, often sitting in on the lessons himself, soaking up knowledge he had missed by leaving school young to work on his family's farm. As the years passed, their valley became known to a small handful of other homesteaders and trappers, all of whom respected the Northwood family's need for privacy and peace. Warren occasionally traded furs and game for supplies, but mostly they were self-sufficient, living off the land and what they could grow or make themselves. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Warren presented Olivia with a gift, a leather-bound journal he had traded for in which to write her story. "So that our children and grandchildren will know," he said. "So they will understand what you survived, what we built together." Olivia did write it all down, filling page after page with their story. The fear and flight, the rescue and refuge, the love that grew in the most unlikely of circumstances. She wrote about the trial and the justice they had achieved, about the life they had built in their Montana valley, and she ended with these words: "I came west seeking a new beginning and found instead a complete transformation. The woman I was in Philadelphia no longer exists. She was replaced by someone stronger, braver, more alive. Warren showed me that safety does not come from comfortable circumstances, but from being loved so completely that you know without doubt that someone will always stand beside you against whatever challenges the world brings. He hid me where no one would ever look, not just in a mountain cave but in his heart. And there, in that safest of all places, I found my home." 20 years after that night in Ruby City, Olivia and Warren sat on the porch of their expanded cabin, watching their grandchildren play in the meadow below. Samuel had married a young woman from a neighboring homestead and already had 3 children of his own. Grace had become a teacher, traveling between remote settlements to bring education to frontier children. William was following in his father's footsteps, learning to be a guide for hunting parties and survey teams, and Emma, their youngest, had developed a talent for healing and was studying with an old doctor in Helena, planning to return and serve the scattered communities of the territory. "We did well," Warren said, his arm around Olivia's shoulders. His hair was more gray than brown now, and lines creased his face, but he was still strong, still capable, still the mountain man who had saved her all those years ago. "We did more than well," Olivia corrected. "We built something beautiful." He kissed her temple. "I would do it all again, you know. Every hard moment, every challenge, it all led here to this, and I would not change a thing." "Neither would I," Olivia said, leaning into his warmth. "Neither would I." As the sun set over the Montana mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of gold and crimson, they sat together in comfortable silence, surrounded by the family they had created, the life they had built, the love that had sustained them through everything. Dangerous men had wanted her dead for what she saw, but a mountain man had hidden her where no one would ever look, and in the process they had found something worth more than mere survival. They had found each other, and that had made all the difference. Their grandchildren's laughter echoed through the valley as darkness fell, and inside the cabin candles began to glow in the windows. This was home. This was family. This was the life they had fought for and won together, and it was in every way that mattered perfect.